The Invoked engine has been seeing play ever since it was initially released in Fusion Enforcers. With its simple yet effective concept of summoning a fusion monster every turn, it is incredibly resilient and still has meta implications to this day. With the myriad of fusion monsters, the invoked cards can be played as a splashable engine or as an entire deck itself. Despite being easy to pick up, there's still some plays that you definitely need to know to master the deck, so stay tuned because this is the complete Invoked guide for 2020.
What's up guys, this is TCG Sam here, and in today's video I got another guide type of video for you guys, and in today's video I'm going to be discussing the Invoked engine. So before we begin, I just want to ask you guys to please remember to leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and turn on that notification bell so you get notified every time I upload. But yeah, without further ado, let's begin. So part 1 of this video is going to be discussing the basic Invoked main deck cards, and the main monster inside of the Invoked archetype is Aleister the Invoker. So what he does is when he's normal summoned, you pretty much just add an invocation from your deck to your hand, specifically the card Invocation, which I will get into later, and its other effect during either player's turn. Discard this card, target one fusion monster you control, it gains 1000 attack and defense until the end of the turn. The card he adds is Invocation, and Invocation plus Aleister are the main parts of the deck. What Invocation does, it acts as a fusion spell that allows you to fusion summon one monster from your extra deck using monsters from your hand as fusion material, but if you're summoning an invoked monster using this spell, you can banish monsters from your field and or either player's graveyard as material instead. Its effect is also really great because once you banish your Aleister plus another attribute monster for your invoked summoned, its effect in the graveyard allows you to put itself back into the deck and add a banished Aleister the Invoker from your banish zone to your hand, giving you a follow-up play for next turn, or giving you a 1000 attack booster. Either way, it recurs itself and pretty much allows you to play it as an engine because you pretty much just never run out of this as long as you have Aleister and Invocation in your deck. The final main deck card you're going to be seeing a lot of is Magical Meltdown, and what Magical Meltdown does is when it's activated, you get to add Aleister the Invoker from your deck to your hand. Its additional effect of protecting your fusion monsters when they're summoned and protecting your fusion spells from negation is also incredibly powerful and should not be overlooked. In other fusion archetypes, when you combine Invoked with like Shaddolls, for example, you get to trigger all your Shaddol effects on summon and your opponent cannot respond to them while this is based on the field. In the case of this, there are some niche interactions with some of the invoked fusion monsters that pretty much just allow you to bypass your opponent's interruptions while this is face up. But that's pretty much all there is to the main deck of Invoked. Yes, there are other invoked cards, but they are much less played if they see any play at all. So I'm not going to be really covering them. But yeah, this is the first part of the video explaining all the basic invoked main deck cards. Now I'm going to be moving on to the second part, which is the extra deck. In part 1 of the video, I discussed how the invoked engine focuses on fusion summoning, and of course there's a myriad of fusion monsters like I mentioned in the introduction. So I'm going to be going over every single one of the relevant ones in what I believe to be the order from best to worst. So starting off, Invoked Mechaba. This is the light attribute invoked monster, which I should also mention, the general summoning condition for most of these invoked monsters is that they require Aleister the Invoker specifically and any other attribute of a monster, allowing you to banish many cards from your opponent's graveyard with an invocation or your own to summon your fusion monsters, which all have powerful effects. So starting off, Invoked Mechaba is kind of a pseudo negate, where when your opponent activates a spell or trap card or monster effect, you get to send the same type of card from your hand to the graveyard, negate the activation, and then banish that card. So Omni Negation with banishing seems pretty good, although you do have to discard one card of the same type, as in spell, trap, or monster. Regardless, Mechaba is one of the most powerful invoked fusion monsters, and you'll definitely be seeing this one the most. Next up is Invoked Purgatrio. Invoked Purgatrio is the fire attribute invoked monster, which requires Aleister the Invoker and one fire monster. So it gains 200 attack for every card your opponent controls and can attack all monsters your opponent controls once each. In addition, it inflicts piercing battle damage to your opponent. So with a card like Purgatrio plus an Aleister in hand giving it 1000 attack, it can essentially mow down an opponent's entire board, dealing heavy damage in the process while clearing all of their monsters. Plus, if you have follow-ups with other fusion monsters, you can just start swinging. In addition, Purgatrio also punishes the opponent for committing cards to the field because it gains 200 attack for every fusion monster. And usually when this comes out, the Invoked player knows they're going for game or heavy damage. Next up is the new Invoked monster from Eternity Code, Invoked Algoides. So Invoked Algoides requires aleister the Invoker and any fusion monster. So Algoides is going to be something you're going to be summoning either with your turn 2 invocation plays or turn 3 like late game invocation plays, because you're going to be able to get fusion monsters in circulation by then to summon Algoides. Its effect is quite powerful. When it's special summon, you get a destroy one monster your opponent controls, or if a monster special summoned to your opponent's field, it also destroys one monster they control. So it acts as a spot removal when you summon it, and when it sticks on the board, it acts as further removal when your opponent special summons. In addition, you can banish one fusion monster from your graveyard, and this card gains attack equal to that banished monster's attack until the end of your opponent's turn. With many of the fusions having over 2,000 attack, for the most part, this card can get up to over 4k very, very easily, getting rid of problems like Red Ice Dark Dragoon. Not much more to say about this. This is a very, very good card, and the 3 I just previously mentioned are probably going to be seen in any deck that plays Invoked. And now for the more niche, but still definitely powerful Invoked monsters, Invoked Raijin. So this is the Wind Invoked monster, and it pretty much just acts as a Book of Moon during either player's turn. Side note, it is level 5, so it can be instant fusion out to sort of just force your opponent into an interruption, and then link it away because it's a warrior, obviously warrior for Isolde, but just the Invoked deck, you get to target one face-down monster on the field, change the face-down defense position. A side note about this, if you instant fusion this out and you set itself, it actually doesn't get destroyed in the end phase, so you get to keep it on the turn. You get to flip it up next turn if it sticks on the board through your opponent's turn. Nonetheless, this is a very, very powerful disruption card, and 2400 defense is nothing to laugh at when you just summon this. Next up is the Floodgate-esque monster Invoked Caliga, which is the Dark Invoked monster. What it does is it only allows each player to attempt to activate one monster effect per turn, and each player to only attack with one monster during battle phase each turn. So, once your opponent commits one monster effect while this is face up, they cannot use monster effects for the rest of the turn until this card is cleared. In addition, if they were to try to go into battle, they'd be forced to choose between this monster or one of your other monsters that may be causing them troubles. As a side note, Invoked Caliga is level 4, which means it can be summoned back with something like Cross Sheep's effect when a monster is fusion summoned. Invoked Caliga is very, very powerful and should definitely not be underestimated because of its level 4. You are also able to use it for rank 4s if it comes to that. And finally, the last monster, Invoked monster, you may or may not see being played is the big boss monster, Invoked Elysium. What it requires is one invoked monster, so all the fusion monsters have invoked in their name, so not the main deck monster Invoker, but the extra deck monsters with invoked in their name, plus a monster that's special summoned from the extra deck. So this is your ultimate boss monster that's going to be coming out either late game or like as a super poly target, which I should also note, all these are very, very good super poly targets because you just have to summon aleister, super poly away one of your opponent's attributed monsters into any of the invoked monsters I just showed, plus you still have an invocation for another fusion play with aleister if you need. Regardless, Invoked Elysium is very, very powerful, obviously, for such a heavy summoning condition. It acts as Dark, Earth, Water, Fire, and Wind attribute on the field, and once per turn, adds a quick effect. You can target one invoked monster you control or in your graveyard, banish it and all monsters your opponent controls with the same attribute as that monster. Late game, when you have a graveyard full of monsters, you can start banishing them to completely wipe your opponent's whole board. Plus, with 3200 attack and 4000 defense, with the backup of aleister, your opponent's going to find it to be very hard to outthink. I understand there are a few other invoked monsters like aleister the Invoker of Madness, Invoked Magellanica, and Invoked Cocytus, but those are see much less play, and thus I will not be going into them, also because I don't really have them. But aside from that, the final two monsters aren't actually invoked fusion monsters, but they are very important to the invoked archetype, and that is Sovereign Almirage and Secure Gardener. So what do these two Cyberuses actually offer the deck? When you can make Sovereign Almirage with a normal summon aleister the Invoker, it's important to remember that the goal of this deck is to get attributes like into your graveyard to maximize your resource usage with invocation, because you don't want to be banishing from your field or using materials in your hand. You want to be banishing from the graveyards. Almirage and Secure Gardener offer exactly that. they offer free, not only do they offer free bodies, but they also offer free attributes for you to use twice, because you summon Almirage once, link it off into Secure Gardener, and then you can either invocation away the Secure Gardener on your field or the Almirage in your graveyard to make Invoke Mechaba or Invoke Purgatrio respectively. This is definitely very, very powerful in the deck because of the quote-unquote one-card Mechaba combo, which gives you one free monster negate and a Mechaba on the board, because all you have to do is normal aleister, search your invocation, turn it into Almirage, turn that into Gardener, invocation away the Gardener, aleister for Mechaba, and then invocation get back aleister, and now you just have a free Omni negate plus an aleister follow-up, which is really, really powerful. So that's going to do it for the explanation of the main deck, and now I'm going to be moving on to the advanced interactions with the deck. Alright, so welcome to this part of the video where I'm going to be discussing the quote-unquote advanced interactions and things you may not know from just looking at the Invoke cards themselves. Yes, I understand they're very easy to pick up, but there are some niche interactions that you should definitely be aware of. So the first one I want to discuss is Magical Meltdown's protection effect. So we all know it can add aleister from your deck to your hand, acting as another starter, but its protection effect is severely undervalued from what I've seen. Once it's sticking on the board, and let's say you have an aleister plus your invocation, let's say now you want to fusion summon away, you can fusion summon away the aleister, banishing itself, and let's say a wind monster to summon Invoked Raijin. What you can do is, on the summon of Raijin, declare on the summon, declare its effect, and since it's in that window that Magical Meltdown is protecting, your opponent essentially cannot respond to your Invoked Raijin's effective book. In addition, of course, it's protecting your invocation from being negated by cards, so Magical Meltdown is actually super, super powerful and should definitely not be undervalued. The next interaction I want to discuss is what happens when you activate Magical Meltdown and add aleister to your hand, but then your opponent activates something like Droll and Lockbird, preventing you from adding cards from your deck to your hand for the rest of the turn. Well, there's no point in summoning aleister unless you hard drew invocation, but the trick with it is you can actually set aleister, and when your opponent attacks into it, flips up, it gets its effect, because when it's flipped face up, it also gets the search for invocation. Might seem obvious to some, but this is an interaction I see people not using enough, so instead of just passing on this, you can actually just set the aleister. The final interaction I want to discuss with you guys is going to be the aleister plus multiple invocations. So let's say you have an invocation and aleister in hand already. You can normal summon aleister add your other invocations. So you might be thinking, well, what am I going to do with two invocations if I'm banishing the aleister off the first one? So for example, let's say we have no attributes in the graveyard that we can use. We can turn our aleister into an Almirage, turn the Almirage into a Secure Gardener, and then activate invocation to summon either I would recommend summoning Purgatrio first if you're going second, and you guys are going to see why. You summon Purgatrio here, activate invocation, put itself back into the deck, and add your aleister back to your hand. So at this point, it may seem obvious to you guys, oh, you can just invocation away the aleister, banishing the Secure Gardener, and summon the Mechaba from your extra deck. This play does work, but there's a much more optimal play that I'm going to show you guys. So when you're at this point, you see you have a Purgatrio, which is why I recommend summoning it first. You can actually boost its attack with aleister the Invoker. So discard aleister to give it 1000 attack, putting aleister in the graveyard. What that does, it allows you to use the next invocation to banish these two and summon Mechaba. So you might be saying all you got was an extra 1000 attack, but the important part about this is your aleister is actually banished now. And once invocation in the graveyard, for the next turn, you're able to use invocation to shuffle itself back in the deck, add an aleister to your hand as a follow-up play for that. Had we just fused away our aleister and left aleister and invocation in the graveyard, we would not have a guaranteed follow-up play, which is just super, super important. In addition, the 1000 attack boost on Purgatrio could be huge and just could definitely be enough for game. So yeah, that's pretty much all I gotta say about this third interaction. Alright, so that's just about to do it for what I have for you guys today. I just wanted to note how this one simple monster with pretty much two simple effects can add so much complexity and have so much complexity, in an archetype, and so much versatility in the different fusion monsters who have different effects for different scenarios. Regardless, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please remember to leave a like on the video, subscribe if you haven't already, leave a comment as well letting me know what you think. And yeah, that's gonna do it for me. I just want to thank you guys so much for watching once again, and I will see you soon.
If you guys want the cheapest Yu-Gi-Oh cards on the market in Canadian dollars with free shipping to Canada, then be sure to check out my eBay page in the description below.